Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Grass Kings. This is the Storied Arcs podcast, and I am your co-host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Alex.
Now, I am already pleased with myself because last episode I announced that it's issues 1 through 6, and if you listen to the Paper Girls podcast, I had a very hard time remembering that it was 5 issues per story arc. This time it's more confusing. It's 1 through 6, followed by 7 through 11, then 12 through 15. And so far, I'm 2 for 2.
Congratulations.
Don't mean to toot my own horn, but I assure you no one else will on that small of a victory.
I definitely won't.
So I hinted that last time I wasn't that crazy about this arc. I think that's unfair. I think it just took me a long time to get into this arc. And to me, so the words I wrote down were, "This is redneck CSI."
Well, I think when we talked about last episode about the shift in tone. We talked about how each arc is a little different, and the biggest tone shift is from 1 and 2, because I think you get some history in about the Grass Kingdom, and a lot of stuff happens story wise in that first arc. There is. Maria shows up.
Dying.
Yeah. Maria shows up, and then the confrontation with Cargill and Sheriff Humbert and all this stuff. A lot of
pinball gets hit.
Yeah. Big Dan is there. The first attack, and then the big attack in the end. A lot of stuff happens. There's a lot of action in this arc. Where we start in the beginning and where we start at the end is very subtle. We start with Robert and Bruce kind of working together, kind of looking back at the history of things that have happened in the Grass Kingdom. And it ends with them coming to blows and at odds. And all we've done is educate the audience, the reader, on the history of not just the kingdom as a whole, but a lot of the other side players. We get Pike, who is a First Nations member who runs the store. We get Shelley, who runs the junkyard, the auto mechanic. We get we get Bruce's time as a sheriff back in Raven. Again, it's all tied around the idea of the thin air killer and this other death. This former kind of part-time resident of the Grass Kingdom, Jen Handel, who death was ruled. Initially, I guess it was a suicide. And the people of Cargill who came...
suicide that no one seems to believe.
It's a suicide.
Everyone's willing to accept, which is a weird line.
It is. And part of it is the idea of, they had, again, like with some of we talked about in the first episode, when something like this happens in the Grass Kingdom, they call in the sheriff from Cargill to try and get some help on the investigation. And Humbert was pretty convinced that this was murder because her trailer burned down. But it was deemed a suicide, and this is kind of one of those things that Humbert needled Bruce with at the end of the first arc. That you go back and look at this, and this is going to lead you down the road of
but now
what the truth
Matt
is.
Kint is needling us with it.
Yes, yeah,
and that to me is the cruel. Now I do think we get a clever resolution of we see how the burning down happened.
Yes,
we have a theory as to how the hanging happened.
Yes.
But we still don't know.
We don't know.
So it's not solved, but it's like you pulled enough back to be like, okay, you made this worth my while.
Yeah.
But my main complaint is the thing that we praised above everything in the first story arc is the art and the way the art carried the story and the way the art told the story. And this is such a dialogue dense and heavy trade paperback here. Well, I feel like the art is wasted.
It's text heavy because a lot of it's flashback, a lot of story. Yeah,
right. I think you read more dialogue in the first issue of this trade than you did in all of the last trade.
Yeah, I would agree. There is a lot more because they're trying to what they're accomplishing in this arc is that
it's conversations, right? And it's like this is not a great use of a visual medium.
No,
they're walking around having conversations.
There is this, but there is the same conceit though that we had of we're getting a lot of flashbacks, and someone is relaying the story, not so much in real time because some of it is at least I think Pike's backstory, the First Nations guy who runs the convenience store, I think it's the Jen Handel character is narrating that. So we know she is dead in current timeline, but she's narrating the story from a place of the future versus what we've seen from Pike's story. So it's still the idea of the narration is coming from a different time than the action that we're seeing. I think the rest of the stories like Shelley's, Maria's, Bruce's, Archie's, all those come from the current day looking back. So it's the same construction, but yeah, it's a lot more text. It's a lot more words. I think the
difference, and we drew this comparison last episode, is you compare this to a Sean Phillips. And sometimes Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips can do dialogue-heavy things. I think there's a lot of words in the Fade Out, for instance.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
However, his art style is a little more up close, and you can read facial details that will sometimes contradict words. You can tell a perp is lying, like in a good noir movie, right? And this kind of crude sketching and watercoloring does not lend itself to that. It feels like a lot of the same panel over and over again a lot of times. I don't think that's Jenkins' fault. This is like, it's just, Kent should know what he has to work with here. And it's like, you're not going to get like subtle eyebrow movements and shift of eyes from Tyler Jenkins' art. And it's unfair to put that on him.
Yeah, I think that's a fair criticism of this arc, and the idea that it's more script-based storytelling than we saw in the first arc. The first arc was much more art-based in terms of
but I don't think it's an accident. Like, I don't think it's laziness, and I don't think it's bad writing.
I think it was intentional. I think it was intentional.
It's very intentional, which you come to terms with throughout it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we jump to the beginning of this story, and some time has passed, and it's very unclear because Humbert's healed, and he was shot. It takes at least a few weeks, but judging from the art, it is now autumn.
Yeah,
and it looked like it was spring or summer before. So let's say a few months, and they're still chewing on this mystery, and they've decided they're going to go into CSI mode, which is like my favorite parody of it was in Community. I think it's season 3. It's the Ass Crack Bandit.
Yes,
and Troy and Abed walk around, and they're like talking to Neil about something, and Neil's just mindlessly like putting papers in a filing cabinet, and there's no reason he would be doing that at all as a character. It's just like what you do in these shows, and I feel like the way that they approach everyone here, you can read it two ways, I guess. One way would be to say like it's a little bit of cookie cutter boilerplate procedural drama type thing. The other way to look at it is to say, no, we've already built this world, this story, and this is an homage to that thing.
Yeah.
And that's the more generous way.
I think it's more in that case because, we're talking about a closed insular community. So digging back into their own past of it, they're not talking to anybody new, They're not interviewing strangers. These are people that they know. So, how much investigating can they really do? What kind of tropes can they really hit? These are the people that, as we talk about, their community all relies on each other. So these are people that they know intimately well in terms of, but they talk about, hey, how well do we really know these people? Well, I call BS on that. I think they know who these people are when they got there. They may not know all their story from how they showed up there, but they know who they are when they're there. And I think,
and they kind of know. They kind of have like a don't ask, don't tell policy.
There is,
right?
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
I don't want to know anything incriminating about you.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to say I know you.
As long as when you're here, and with us, you abide by the things that we all agree on.
Right.
You're okay with that. But because Bruce has this tingling in the back of his mind because of what Humbert told him, and he's been talking to Robert about it, they feel they got to act on something, and I think they, at least I feel Robert is kind of resigned on how much he feels they can actually do, because at this point I think Bruce is like, I'm back in sheriff mode. You know, I'm back in. I used to do this for a living. I know what I'm doing. Go back, reinvestigate a case. I think Robert's more resigned of like, well, let's see what comes of it. You know, he's a little more skeptical, but he'll do it because I think at this point he still feels it's good for the community to try to figure this out and see what's here. Obviously, by the end of the arc, he's very much against that. But for now, at the start, it's the idea of, okay, well, let's look into this because maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something here worth checking out. You know, Bruce seems in on it, so let's go and take a look and you know, start talking to people and see what we get. And I think that's the reason why it's so text heavy, dialogue heavy, because this whole arc, all 5 issues, it's just folks talking to each other. It's like a giant game of telephone, where
and the handoffs between issues are very cool.
It's structured very well. Where you jump from you
get a replay of the last scene from a new vantage point.
You know what they said, and the characters leave, and you follow the previous character. Or it's overheard, and you jump back around, and it's interesting because I think the main theme of all of this arc comes when Asher and Pinball go see the Satellite Sisters, Patch and Judy, who we learn are they had a quick cameo in the first arc when Robert's going around rallying the troops. But
frankly, much like Hemingway, much like Pike, basically all the characters we meet here are people we just got.
Yeah, so they weren't even named. They weren't even named in the first arc. But they're the Satellite Sisters, and we find out they are the people in charge of surveillance, I guess, in the Grass Kingdom. They are out there listening to and recording basically everything that goes on.
In an Orwellian way.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like 1984 level stuff.
Yeah, they talk about now, all the recordings are saved digitally to the cloud. Anything back in the day, they have like actual physical tapes on. And this is stuff they've kept. So they can go back, you know. So what happens is, you know, Asher and Pinball go back and they want to find some of the recordings from around the time right before the teacher, Jen Handel, was killed. So, you know, the Satellite Sisters go back and they bring out a big box of tapes from around that time, and they're all like meticulously labeled, like who was talking to who and when and the time, which means like...
And it asks a lot of trust.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, don't worry, if anyone from the outside came, this place would
we
blow
burn
up. And he's like, really?
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, it wouldn't actually like self-detonate, but we would take care of it. Trust us.
Yeah.
All of your secrets are safe with us.
And you get 2 reactions. You get Asher is like, yeah, this is the cost of this. We got to do, which you would expect him to say, being family of the guys who run this stuff and probably help set it all up. And then you got Pinball being like, whoa, wait a minute, I thought we're like the free people. Like, what are we doing with this? Like, you mentioned this real like Orwellian style kind of overlording of our communications and all of that. He's the one kind of taken aback, like, wait a minute, you guys listen to all of that? You record all of that? And he's kind of taken aback. So it almost makes it feel like maybe not everyone knows the level. Like every time you talk on one of the radios or CBs or on a phone, that someone's listening.
Well, I think the other thing to consider, though, is that it should be equally appalling that they receive what they were looking for.
Yes.
Like, yeah. So if someone came in here and asked you for my tapes, you would just hand them over to any other member of the Grass Kingdom?
But to be fair, though, actually, they don't hand them over. They do say they can't leave their trailer there, that Judy and Patch will listen to them, but Asher sneaks one of them out, which is that propels the plot forward in terms of what actually happens story-wise. But it is the idea that anyone can request. So they basically asked.
And Asher can really only get in so much trouble.
Yeah. But still, it's the idea that we see in some of the art, especially in this arc, we see, I guess they're cameras or mics that are all around. So I guess people know that they're...
My understanding is that they are in all public shared spaces, not in people's homes.
Yes, yeah.
But which does separate it from Orwell, and to me...
But they have phone conversations. So they're not
wiretapping.
Yeah, they're not hearing you if we're talking to you in my trailer. But if I call you on the phone or on the CB or anything like that, they have that recording. And so there's a level of the the first arc was very much
they have their own Patriot Act.
Yeah.
And they, to me, it's. I want to know why they have it.
Yeah.
Well,
but
it's
I
not
think
suspicion of their own citizens. I think it's to monitor when some foreigner comes in.
Maybe so, but I think Robert and Bruce probably and all the guys would say that it's for. You need this for the security of the Grass Kingdom. We need to make sure that everyone here is bought into what we believe in, which, again, is kind of the antithesis of the idea of, we're being free of restrictions or whatnot. This is a very strict one. And I think they would make that argument that this is a necessary evil. And I think Asher even says that when he's trying to justify it to Pinball. Like, hey, this is the cost of us being, quote unquote, free.
Right. Which
and Pinball's like, well, like, is that freedom? Which is, I think, is a valid question. And so the idea that they're in this free, independent state, quote unquote, but yet they're under this level of surveillance.
Yeah, I mean, at risk of sounding like a country ballad, freedom is never free.
Yeah.
There's always some cost and there's always some trade-off.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and I understand the adults have made the calculus and decided to do this.
Yeah.
It's interesting that Pinball has been living in this and does not know that he has made that negotiation.
Yeah. Well, again,
that's the problem.
And we talk about, Pinball in the first, him and Asher being the younger guys. And we obviously see in this arc, they play in a band with two other people, and they leave the Grass Kingdom to go play a gig. These guys
whenever they want to.
Yeah. So, because no one's stopping them there. And we know that Pinball has snuck out to Cargill to see movies and wants to do other things. And
he's got that vinyl record collection. I don't think there's a vinyl shop in the Grass Kingdom.
Exactly. Yeah. So the idea that he maybe understands and probably does believe in what they're doing in the Grass Kingdom, but he does want a little more and maybe has a different understanding has a different understanding of what they're doing there, what they are all about. Because he clearly wasn't aware that the surveillance was this level, and you get the sense of that. Okay, they claim this is a necessary evil, probably, but then you start thinking, well, what can this do? And we see with the tape that Asher takes, he doesn't even know what's on it, but what he sees is Archie, who is Pinball's dad, adopted dad. We find out, but he's all intents and purposes his father. It's a conversation between him and Jen Handel, the teacher who died. And Asher doesn't know what it is. And Pinball is clearly surprised. Like he didn't know his dad had any relationship with Miss Handel. So Asher takes it and he surreptitiously drops it off to Robert, and Robert and Maria listen to it. But it's the idea that this stuff that they're recording, obviously what satellite systems were talking about, if anyone, this would never leave the Grass Kingdom. It'd never get out. We'd burn it all. We'd get rid of it. But it's actually being weaponized internally now because they find out that Archie maybe didn't actually have an affair with Jen Handel, but he was taken by her. He wanted to. Yeah. He wrote all these love letters to her while he was with his wife Allison, which is Pinball's mother, and also I think they have a sister. He has a younger sister as well. So, it would upend his life. And also, as we find out, it implicates her in her death because we find out that she had called him in a panic the night she died. He goes over to her. He finds her already dead, hanging in her closet. And instead of calling for help or whatnot, he freaks out about the love letters and doesn't know where they are. So he burns the trailer down.
Right.
So this idea that the worry that all this stuff, the recording, and Pinball's original worry was, hey, this gets out, how bad it looks for us on the outside. It ends up being about an us versus us on the inside, again, which is a change from the first arc, which was very much us, the Grass Kingdom, versus them.
You notice in this story arc, you do not get Humbert until the final pages.
Yes, yeah.
At least not present time.
Yeah, he's not there are no outside forces acting in on you right now. All the struggle comes internally, and it's all based around this surveillance state that they've set up.
Right, which just takes me back to my that quote that I loved in the first one, where it's like, we're safe in this because of each other.
Yes.
Like the whole fabric of everything they're doing is built on this baseline level trust, although the baseline level trust is built on a willful level of ignorance.
Yeah. Yep.
And so the whole thing seems to be tearing at it's fraying at the edges. And you understand all of these opening panels. Yeah. Why on this spot of land, someone has had a fight over it every 100 years. Mm-hmm. You know, whether it was apparently dragons in this fantasy Tolkien-esque.
Yes,
according to the
absolutely.
Opening of issue 4.
Before then the many years before the native settlers
490 AD.
Yeah.
But you'd have indigenous people here, and then you've got 1760. All those timestamps from the beginning, and all of them are depicting conflict. 1920s. It's all showing you something about human nature, something that the Grass Kingdom has tried to deny or bury or obscure or possibly even overcome through isolation.
Maybe so. But again, it's the idea that there's always going to be some conflict, but maybe the assumption was, and maybe incorrect assumption, was that conflict would always come from the outside. Like we saw in the first arc.
From those people.
It was the outsiders,
we
Cargill.
All have agreed to this social contract.
But now we see that, it is fraying at the edge, and that maybe their construct is not as solid as we thought, as maybe they thought it was.
It's a founder's error, in my opinion, because anytime you found a thing like this, whether it's a club or a band or a guild of any kind, or a country, there is some implicit understanding between the founders. They all understand the terms and what they're agreeing to. And within a generation or two, you get a pinball who's like, I'm signed up for what now?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I didn't agree to that. And the system needs to either change or die. And either way, there's probably some blood spilled.
Yeah. That maybe things on the inside, quote unquote, aren't really all that different from how they are on the outside. And, that's something that Maria talks about. We find out a little more of her motivation, that she came here specifically because there's something going on with these murders, and she feels that Humbert screwed up, and so she came over here also to get away from him.
Well, Hemingway says,
try to find out. Yeah,
this is why I live here.
Yeah. But at some point, Maria blows up at Shelley like, you guys are no better than everything out there. The same internal politics, the same, hiding of the truth and obscuring the facts and things like that to save your own butt.
Which is not an unfair thing to say, but at that point, I would take the guns away from her.
Yeah. This is true.
If you think we're the same as the people out there, I just saw you unload rounds into multiple persons.
But at this point, she's been there for a few months. She's been living with Robert. Robert's better. Maria seems to be going all right. But there is the sense of that, this idea of the Grass Kingdom, everything it's built on, what we're seeing now in this arc is that maybe it's not even just as tenuous. It may be a complete facade. It may be a total house of cards that's already falling, and they're only now just coming to realize that because they aren't that different from everybody else, from the outside world. That they're driven by the same sort of things, even though they claim that we're doing this all for each other. Everyone kind of being equal, accepting what we have. But as we see at the end of the arc from Robert, his understanding is, no, the most important thing is we got to protect this. It's not about finding the truth. If there's a killer here or whatnot, we solved that. It's important for us to deal with this internally.
Right.
It's not about the truth. It's not about resolution. It's about keeping the kingdom together. It's about what happens to us. And that's effectively the same kind of thing that you would say that Sheriff Humbert has about Cargill. It's all about him and the people he, quote unquote, protects and serves, and it's in the end, it's just a very selfish way to look at the world. And I think that's what Maria is trying to get across, that nobody's different than anybody else. This is all that we have. And it's trying to now show that what's inside, like I said, what's inside isn't all that different from what's on the outside.
Yeah. And we find out that Archie also arrived in the Grass Kingdom running away from demons.
Yep.
creates all new demons.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just like, yeah, your setting changed. You didn't.
Yeah.
You're still the same person.
Yeah.
You got to work through that stuff. You can't just go somewhere else and hit the reset button.
But he tried, though. It's clear he tried.
He did, but isn't he not a test case for the failure of the Grass Kingdom concept?
Yes.
But now the only piece of the plot that we actually didn't really talk about, I mean, we get a Shelley backstory, we get a Pike backstory. Yeah. I don't feel like recapping those beat for beat.
No.
But we did not talk about Asher and Pinball's venture to the island.
I was going to get to there. Yeah,
okay.
Because
that's very brief,
and it's a total outlier. We don't see
right.
They go there.
They get no information.
We get nothing. Yeah,
so it's not even really part of the investigation. It's kind of like, you're laying pipe for Volume 3.
Yeah, so you have to make the assumption that something comes. So you get one. Basically, one mention of the island when we should say
in Volume 1.
It's an ex-Naval SEAL who lives there, a guy by the name of Neil Barco.
And Maria stopped there.
Yeah, Maria stopped there. So we know it exists. And then here we get an actual scene there. It's very brief, and it's in the process of Asher and Pinball doing their own, because everyone's kind of doing their own investigation because
right.
of and re-examination of what happened to Miss Handel. So as part of their investigation, they ended up going to the island.
And what we learned about the island, though, is that it's two people there, and they are dangerous, but they are also discerning.
Yes.
They did not harm Maria.
Yeah.
They were pretty pissed, but they did not harm Pinball and Asher.
Yeah. Well, and so the one guy that's the first guy they meet is Sam, who I think has one scene cameo in the first arc, but they know him. They know him.
Yes, they know him, and I wrote it down as Sam's Island.
Well, it's
not.
Because I think Sam is part of the Grass Kingdom.
Okay.
And they talk about something like either one of the kids, Asher Pinball, says, hey, aren't you supposed to be, managing our guns and ammo? So it's like he's like the munitions guy, I guess. But he's part of the Grass Kingdom. And then Barco comes out, and whatever Sam is doing with Barco has nothing to do with the Grass Kingdom, because we see some shady fingers in the back, like through some glass, some bald guys in suits, which clearly means they're probably bad guys. But, Barco makes it very clear that they are technically trespassing because the island is not part of the Grass Kingdom. He's like, he respects what they're doing out there, but you guys are your own thing. This island, my island, is my own thing. You guys shouldn't be here. If you come back, we're going to shoot you. And,
right. It's like that's like a Grass Kingdom versus Grass Kingdom.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Or Grass Kingdom versus another version of the Grass Kingdom. Maybe the more militant version that we kind of talked about in the first episode.
Yeah.
The idea that they're, this guy's ex-Navy SEAL, who you would probably make a pretty good bet he's got some sort of specific beefs with the government, because he's ex-military and now he's living off the grid.
And he knows how to wield whatever he
is. Yeah. But it happens so quickly because Sam these guys, Asher and Pinball, they know Sam. He's someone from the Grass Kingdom, but Sam draws on them to get them off the island. And so they hightail it out, and they get back to the Grass Kingdom, and they jump right back into the ongoing kind of investigation of the overall story. So that quick couple pages on the island really kind of get glossed over because they're sandwiched by everything else that's going on. This uncovering more and more about, hey, what was going on with Jed? What was going on with Archie? Does any of this have to do with the case that Bruce had in Raven, which is thought to be like the first case of this potential serial killer and all that stuff? There's all this kind of murder mystery, murkiness, and intrigue around there, that the stuff on the island, it just seems like a random blip. And, if you're, an attentive storyteller or story consumer, you can safely assume that, okay, this is probably going to be important maybe later,
Right.
But it goes by so quickly, and without any context and any follow-up in this arc, it seems wildly out of place because it's never followed up again. Even Asher and Sam, when they don't talk about it again. When they get back, they're talking about other things.
Right.
They don't even bother with talking about what just happened. The fact that they were on this
that's
island.
also like teenage boys, right?
It probably
it's,
is.
yeah, it's just like, their brains are like Etch-a-Sketches.
Yeah.
And it's like, just one good shake and they're totally reset. and ready to go do something stupid again.
Yeah, which, but yeah, it's the one random kind of out of place scene. Everything else is tied to this overall mystery of the death of Jen and how it does or doesn't tie in with this overall mystery of a serial killer.
Well, and there's these enigmatic quotes from Sam and the other guy.
Yeah, about
trouble.
He says something about it's global. It's bigger than. What is that quote you have in front of you?
It's
Sam says something
on the
about that
page right next to me. I'm serious. What's going on here is big.
Yeah.
Global big. Whatever you guys are looking into, this ain't it. You need to get out of here quick. And then it says, boys, you're trespassing. We don't get this guy's name, but he is not one to be messed with. Yeah. So, and then
that is we assume that is
big guy says trouble, and
is,
Sam says maybe.
Yeah, that's Barco. That's the guy who's they assume it is his island. He is the ex-Navy SEAL. But yeah, so there's these really vague and kind of ominous stuff there. But yeah, they're only on the island for what, like 1, 2, 3, 4,
which
like
makes
5
me
pages?
think that they, as the more militant ones, are both more paranoid and more suspicious of Fed activity.
Definitely.
They're ready for it. They're expecting it.
Yeah. They're almost they're planning for it themselves, probably.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's meant to show them in opposition to what we've seen in the Grass Kingdom so far. Is that they got guns to protect themselves, but they're not trying to actively engage with anybody.
Right. They got one guy on a water tower, and
with
they'll all and they'll all load up if they need to.
Yeah. Then everyone's got a handgun or a shotgun maybe under the sink or something.
And gas masks, which says to me, not the first time they've been gassed.
Well, also, I think I think it's part of the plan. They know that they have that giant thing of tear gas that they're going to drop on their enemies, so they're kind of ready for that. And it all looks like it's maybe World War I, World War II, great stuff. But yeah, the gas masks are there because they have the tear gas. So, but yeah, so because right after this encounter, they go to the Satellite Sisters, and that becomes a whole new aspect. Again, we dive right. That takes us from this very weird, very out of place scene on the island with all these militant ex-military guys, and then we jump right into this question about surveillance, which is kind of the overall arc theme of this arc. And so you kind of quickly forget about that random 5 pages of them on the island, and it kind of goes away because you're immediately thrown into the overall surveillance state that they're in. So let me tell you, it's an interesting way to mask kind of the storytelling of how they reveal things and when they reveal things.
Yes. Well, and the other one that comes in the issue before that is kind of hits and then never is brought up again in this arc is this fact that like Hemingway and Pike share some kind of secret about this thing. Because Pike is saying, what did you tell him? And Hemingway says, I don't know anything.
Yeah. Oh, no. Sorry, that was not.
Is that Pike?
That was not Hemingway. That was. Wait,
that's the end of issue 8?
Yes, that is.
Who was that?
Is Johann. That's the Birdman.
Right, Birdman.
Yeah, that's not Hemingway. Yeah. I know some of the old guys all look alike. But yeah, that's the Birdman.
No, that was a memory error.
Yeah, that's the Birdman. The aerial funeral. He. The way to get rid of all the bodies.
There's an owl munching down on it, which is a little unusual to me.
Well, I guess whatever birds they have in the area. But yeah, so we find a little more about that. That there's something else, maybe a little going on about some of these deaths and how they handle them, maybe internally, in the kingdom itself.
Yeah. But I think the basic idea here is that. The theme of this one is that you're getting the dark underbelly of the Grass Kingdom.
Yeah.
And as I was logging this on Goodreads, which I'm like one of their most active users, someone was commenting on this and they said they were like, by the end of this, I don't care who wins. Everyone's so dirty. I'm sick of it. It's kind of like watching The Wire, where it's just like, I mean, you can have a favorite, I guess, based on like performance or who's funniest or wittiest or whatever, but everybody deserves a bullet in the head.
Yeah, and I think they're definitely showing that here. That
which is the anti-hero thing.
Yeah.
That I don't think you and I will be covering a lot of anti-hero stories, so I think it's healthy to kind of mix this in because I'm not a huge fan of anti-hero stuff in general. I think it's very played out. It's very
I was going to say played out. They're
not that it's bad. It's just played out.
Yeah. I think there are only so many beats you can hit with that, and I think the intentional tone of this arc was, we very much saw the first arc. I guess you can read it as they were being heroes, that they were defending themselves against the outside world, and we saw them all come together and embody those quotes we mentioned about, everyone living for each other, not taking too much, sacrificing and doing everything together. And I think we saw the strength of the community, of the kingdom at the end there, at the end of the arc when Humbert and his deputies ride in and try to forcibly remove Maria.
Right.
We see the best possible version of the Grass Kingdom in that moment, I guess, because it's them standing up saying that we will defend our own, and kind of showing what they're all about there.
Right. And which I guess it's a redux of the end of Volume 1 because that's Humbert storming in trying to get Maria.
Yeah.
But all we've seen of the Grass Kingdom so far is this noble.
Yes.
We care about each other. We protect each other. Yeah. We're not greedy. We do all the noble traits.
Yeah.
And it's of course they're defending her. They're very intrinsically noble. Yeah. And in this one, it's oh man, they're all kind of dark and grimy, but man, they still do the family thing.
Yeah, but
families are messy.
Yeah, they are, and that maybe they're what they've built maybe it's not all that different than what's on the outside. That maybe it's the same sort of problems,
flaws on
the same sort of messiness. Yeah, that permeate through what we'll say regular society also permeates through the Grass Kingdom, and that maybe what they have isn't so perfect. And the idea that everyone's being surveilled, that they, that everyone having their secrets, everyone having their shady-ish past is maybe not the best way to build trust around each other. That maybe it's not enough just to say, hey, wherever you're here is why you're here, and as long as you abide by everybody else, it's good enough.
Right.
Maybe it takes a little more than that. Maybe it's not so rose-colored glasses and idealistic like that. That that we saw the best of them maybe in the first arc, and now we're seeing what the worst of it is in this arc. It's a complete kind of inversion to upend the way we think about it. Instead, it doesn't take an outside force like Sheriff Humbert and the deputies of Cargill. It takes the works and the decisions of the people running the Grass Kingdom. It takes the internal politics of their own free state to show the dark underside of their supposed paradise.
Yeah, and I guess what hurts about it for me is that I'm not inclined to like these type of characters anyway. Mm-hmm. And they won me over in Volume 1, and then they just rip it to shreds.
Immediately take that. Yeah.
But I'm here talking about it, right? So it's it's effective at what it's doing. I just don't like when you do that to me. But it's kind of like how Andy Kaufman is with the crowd. It's like whether you're laughing or booing, I don't care. I'm getting an emotional reaction out of you, and that's my goal. As an entertainer. And
I think that's the point. What they're trying to get across here is that you're not supposed to maybe be totally rooting for them or against them. He's trying to, so we talked about how, Humbert was a very one-dimensional character as a villain, and we obviously don't get more of him here. But even though we know inherently that everyone in the Grass Kingdom has these dark side to him, a dark side, a hidden past, we're actually getting them seen laid bare in this arc. They're actually we're getting specifics of knowing where they came from and how they got to where they are, and I think it's meant to round these characters out. So you don't necessarily feel that just because they're here, they're on the side of good. They're on the side of right.
Right.
Simply because they're fighting for what they believe in, as it were. That no, these people are people, and people are messy, and people have problems. And a group of them together, whether they are in a regular, normal, incorporated town in the United States of America, or in their own self-declared fiefdom of the Grass Kingdom, the same problems are going to persist because people are people everywhere. And they're Kent and Jenkins are toying with you. They want to pull you in, and they want to pull that rug out from under you again, just when you think you have a handle on who these characters are. And yeah, it is effective, and which I think why the tone shift is so abrupt. And if you're expecting more of that story,
at least they broke it across trades.
Yes.
And at the end of the first one in the comic, they say end of part one.
Yeah.
So it's not the bait and switch that I interpreted it as, because they telegraphed it.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing.
Well, they telegraph it's the end. There's no telegraph that it's going to be as an abrupt shift as it was. But this is why I think it reads better in collected trade, because you can get through all of it and understand, okay, this is what the arc of this is, as opposed to
and
1 month right after issue 6 coming in issue 7 and reading that and be like, wait, what are we doing here? Well, we're not progressing. The story isn't progressing at all, because the story really doesn't progress in this arc, as we mentioned earlier. It's very much about tone and backstory and more the sense of foreboding around the kingdom. We learn more about this murder from this death from the past. We learn more about the potential history of the thin air killer. We learn more backstory about everybody, most other players in the Grass Kingdom, but the story itself doesn't actually move forward very much. We haven't learned a whole lot more, other than there's a breaking point between Robert and Bruce. Just when Robert has just gotten back on his feet. He's back to, I guess he's sober and he's running the kingdom better now. Just when he's back on his feet and got a few good months under his belt, Bruce kind of needles him about this, and then they hit a breaking point and they come to blows, and we see that the things that Robert wants are really the same things that Humbert wants, and that it's all about doing whatever it takes to protect his people.
Now, since we learn the noble side of these characters, then the dark underbelly, what Matt Kent is telling us is that every character has a dark underbelly.
Yes.
And almost all of them have a good side. Do you infer from that there is a sympathetic side to Humbert that we haven't seen or haven't seen yet?
I think so. I think that's a fair assumption to make, that because it would be bad storytelling. I think it'd be lazy storytelling if you decide that all of your quote-unquote hero characters, they get all the three-dimensional aspects. We see the good side and the bad side, but your villain is just a straight-up bad guy.
Right. And that's the stuff that I just absolutely object to. I want my villain to challenge a flaw in the hero.
Yes.
The problem is we don't have a hero.
Yeah. So
this is
which is why it would make it weirder if our villain were just a straight-up villain. Because our quote-unquote heroes, we saw them at their best coming together, and now we're seeing them at their worst as they tear each other apart from the inside.
Right.
Those are our quote-unquote heroes. If our bad guy is then just someone who's just straight up bad because he hates everybody and hates the world, and we don't see where that comes from.
Well, at least they're not him.
Yes.
We don't have to improve any because, there's that guy over there.
Yeah. There's someone who's always worse.
There's the whataboutism.
Yeah. So, but I think it's because he's so scarce. I think you're right. He's just in that one scene at the end, right? When after they find the truth about Archie and they get his confession. And
then he goes to report to him.
Bruce goes, well, because he's saying, hey, it wasn't murder. He said it wasn't murder. Archie found Jen. She's already dead. She hung herself in her closet. He burned the trailer out of a misguided sense of what he needed to do. And then it's that point that, Humber drops another bomb saying well, you guys couldn't do an autopsy because you're you.
Right.
We can do an autopsy. And we found that her hands had been tied behind her back with plastic zip ties.
Right.
Which was this mark of all these killings that we believe are tied to the thin air killer. So if her hands were zip tied behind her back,
which is like a shock, but not a crazy twist, because someone who commits suicide does not call the person who drove them to suicide in a panic.
Yeah. Well,
right before they die.
But also the idea is
we
like,
got that detail already.
Yeah, but the detail is like, if her hands were zip tied behind her back to the point that, they're these indentions, cutting off circulation in her wrists, like how could she do that and then hang herself? So that's
right.
That's the indication there that once again, this is Humbert saying, you think you guys in the grass, you think you've solved something, you've done something. You think you've done real police work, and he's coming back being like, no.
Right.
We still got it.
Which, if anything, just further undermines this volume in my mind.
Yeah. Well,
it's oh, so we went through all this muck, but we accomplished something. Oh, but twist, we didn't.
You get a twist there, and also you also then get a bit of an idea that yes, Humbert is still the bad guy, he's still evil, but like, okay, maybe he can actually do a little bit of good police work.
Yes.
Maybe,
no. He's got the procedurals down.
Yeah,
he's got the files. He's got the paperwork.
Yeah.
And his foot is propped up on, and this is back in Volume 1, his foot was propped up on a box that said Grass Kingdom 611.
Yeah.
Meaning he's holding on to 7-year-old paperwork and has it pulled out ready to go.
Yeah.
Because he's still working a case.
Yeah. Well, and
maybe that's implicitly, I mean, you have to reach for it. You got to really want it. But maybe that's implicitly the strong side of him. It's like, hey, you know what? He does represent law and order, and he is personally flawed, but he's actually not bad at the law and order piece.
Which then comes down to the idea of, okay, well, so we've seen that maybe they can actually do the investigation stuff pretty well. So then you think okay, well, if they can do this stuff, if they have this ties, because again, that zip tie revelation is important to Bruce because he saw that in his last case out. We get his flashback in the town of Raven, the boy that died was like the first murder in Raven in many years. The one note was that his hands were zip tied behind him when they found him dead. So that triggers something in Bruce. But so the question about Humbert is, okay, well, if he can do this, and maybe we see maybe he is competent as an investigator. Sure
he's got pretty legitimate reason to suspect this small group of people.
Yeah. So then, why haven't they arrested anybody?
One of whom
why haven't they done anything?
Tied and hung a woman, and the other of whom burnt down her house with her corpse in it.
Yeah,
it's like I'm pretty sure that's a crime as well.
Yeah,
it's not murder, but it's
Well, and so by coming this way and dealing with him, this sets off Robert on Bruce of like, hey man, you don't go to the enemy, you don't share this information with him because that's going to bring a problem for Archie and bring a problem for everybody else. But there is the idea of, okay, well, what has Humbert done with all this investigative material? It's clear that maybe he's pretty good at it, but they haven't arrested anybody, haven't figured anybody out. Do they even know it's a serial killer? To
be fair, the last time he went in the Grass Kingdom for any reason, he got shot.
That is true. But
so I think he's waiting for an excuse
to jump back
really
in.
Bring down everything on there, because I think he has it narrowed down, but I don't think he really knows.
Yeah,
I think he would have thrown that in Bruce's face.
You think he would that he knows?
I think if he knew the exact person.
That's true. That seems.
I
like
mean, he doesn't want to help Bruce, but I think he wants Bruce to know how incompetent Bruce is,
and lord over him how much more he knows than Bruce does.
Which maybe he's just doing that by the drop because it's like slow torture.
It is,
But I don't think he could holster his ammunition that well.
I don't know. Well, so, I mean, so far the last couple of times we've seen him, it's Bruce goes to Cargill, talks with Humbert,
and Humbert surprises us.
They get heated. Bruce thinks he has the last word, and Humbert's like, "Nope, I got something else for you." That was the end of book 1 of volume 1. And here at the end of book 2, the same thing happens. He goes back there. He's like, "I got the truth about the murder, about the death of Jen Handel. It was suicide. Archie screwed up. We have the evidence that proves it. Blah 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 blah." And then he's like, "It's done. It's over with. Close the case." And then Humbert's like, "Nope, I got the last word again." Her hands were tied. It connects to this thin air killer. So every time Bruce thinks he has the upper hand by showing they've looked into it, Humbert is coming back and cutting him out
in ways that Humbert doesn't even understand.
Yes,
that we understand. So I do like the vantage point we have here. Again, there's no protagonist.
Yeah.
It's not a single person. In Volume 1, you would have said Robert, but there are whole issues without him now.
Yeah, and
so to me, it just feels adrift. You really are following the kingdom.
I was going to say that your protagonist is almost the place. And
also, how have we not talked about the title? Grass Kings. It's plural.
Yes.
Well, yet there's one king of the kingdom.
There is, but I think the idea is we see three different vantage points. We see Robert's, Bruce's, and really Asher's. We get less of him, but
right.
he's still a main character. So the idea that
the Grass Dynasty,
that they are the kings of this, because
I thought it meant that perhaps each person, like there is no king and they're all king unto themselves.
Yeah, but I think it's just an allusion to the fact that these are the three that kind of hold the various parts together here.
Yeah.
That losing one of them could, kind of your three legs of the stool there. You lose one of them, the whole thing topples over. But yeah, no, it and that's exactly what happens at the end here. That
right.
Bruce comes back from Cargill and tells Robert what he did, and Robert blows up at him, basically like you're going to the enemy. What are you doing, spilling our secrets? That tape of Archie and the phone call between him and Jen before Jen was found dead. Like that's ours. You had no right to take that information over to Cargill, and he blows up on him and basically beats him up and starts shouting, all about what they have to do, what their responsibility is, to the kingdom, not to the truth, which because of the detail about the hands being bound and that triggering Bruce's time when he was away from the kingdom as sheriff in Raven, he now feels a greater responsibility to find this serial killer because it's something that connects him to both his time in and outside of the kingdom. He wants to find the truth. This is what I got to do.
Well, that and the thing that he ran from has caught up to him.
Yeah.
There's no escaping this. You turn around and face it.
Yeah. So
whether in the Grass Kingdom or in Raven or the next place.
For him, it's about finding the truth about this because again, it came from both inside and outside the kingdom. For his experience, he is driven by finding the truth, and Robert's like, no, our job is to protect the kingdom. Protect our land, our people, our community. So we do whatever we need to do internally, but we're not going out and trying to find, going to the outside world and giving them potential evidence that there's a killer here. If there's one here, we'll find it and we'll deal with it our way. That's kind of what Robert's saying. As Bruce is being like, no, we need all the help we can get.
The problem is,
there's a serial killer here. We need
Robert's
everybody.
way, which is drunk on the porch and not asking questions about it. Because we would rather ignore unpleasant things.
Yes, and now it appears his way is okay. We'll deal with it, but we'll deal with it internally. Like you don't, the bigger thing is going outside the family, as it were. Which is why
and there are so many real life analogies here.
This
is like,
and again, I think it again shows that the Grass Kingdom in the end isn't all that different. Because again, what Bruce
actually the term for this in whether it's college football and a coach finds out somebody cheated and they try to deal with it internally with internal discipline or anything like that, it's called institutional failure.
Yes.
Right, that's the term.
Yeah.
And whether it's the police department or the Catholic Church or it's institutional failure. And this is Grass Kingdom institutional failure. Which is really freaking sad for 13 people or something, whatever this is.
Well, I think it's a little more than that, but but it's the idea that it is now Bruce up with it because Bruce, he wants truth, he wants the answer, doesn't care who's there. He is now by basically siding with truth. He wants to know what is going on with this serial killer, with this thin air killer. That's all he's driven by.
And it's a good twist that him siding with truth is also him siding with Humbert.
And I was saying specifically by siding with truth, he's now effectively siding against the Grass Kingdom because that is not what Robert wants. Because Robert wants to keep everything internal. So by Bruce saying, no, there are things that are bigger than us, and that is the truth behind this. If there's someone here, if there's not, if this is all a bunch of BS, we need to find out, because there are too many ties saying there might be something here. We got to find out what that is, and we need all the help we can get, because that's the most important. And
right,
Robert
and Maria
saying,
shares the same drive as Bruce.
Yes, yeah.
Which is a conflict. It's two ships headed toward each other that collide just past the end frame here.
Which is why Maria comes to the Grass Canyon, because she thought it'd be different.
Right.
And she finds out that it's not.
It's just a microcosm for all of them. They all naively thought, well, we can just take people from the outside world and put them in a different place, and they'll magically become other people. They don't.
Yeah,
that's just not how it works.
But it's only Bruce who, by the end of this arc, is basically saying, okay, well, if this is how it is for me no longer to be part of the Grass Kingdom, like, this is bigger for me. If I can't be here, if he's basically exiled now, I'm going to continue doing this because this is what I believe is important now. So it's kind of him coming to that realization that maybe there are things bigger than the Grass Kingdom, and that's something that Robert can't accept. Because for Robert now, because Robert basically just got this back, for him, once he lost his daughter and his wife, everything fell apart, and he was still in charge, but not really in charge. So he feels he just got this back. I'm just back to myself, who I need to be for our people and our community. And now his own brother is coming in and saying, no. We got to throw all that away because there's something greater than that. Robert can't handle that. He can't process that as a possibility. So, in the end, throws Bruce out and and I
think it's even possible that had Bruce come to Robert before going to Humbert, maybe they would have had a better discussion about getting to the truth.
Yeah, maybe so.
But I think
he's
reacting to the betrayal of going to Humbert.
Yes.
More so than his disinterest in the truth.
Yes,
but his hatred of that man has made him say, "Well, screw the truth."
Yeah,
because that guy can't win.
Because Robert knows by going to the outside to find the truth, there are other forces that'll come in outside of just the people of Cargill.
You just gave them all the warrant they need.
Yeah. So what Bruce is saying is, something bigger is going on here. There's something if there's someone here, there's something bigger than just the Grass Kingdom. So we need outside help. We need as much as we can to figure this out to help our own cause. And what Robert is saying is, no. There's nothing bigger than the Grass Kingdom. We will figure it out. I think he does want to find this out because, again, he was the one who was obsessed with the idea of the thin air killer, the serial killer that he believes, probably took his daughter. So he's not opposed to try to find that. He was investigating with Bruce earlier in the arc. It's just the idea of what's most important is keeping it internal. Right. That we'll figure it out this way, doing it our way with our people, and we find the truth of it. We'll deal with it. You don't go to the outside. You don't bring anyone else in because that gives them, like you said, all the warrant to bring more folks in to destroy their way of life as they see it. To find this one thing because this one thing is big, but it's not bigger than everything.
Robert has carved out for himself a great position as a D1 college coach.
Really does, yeah.
It's just like, no, we don't report to any outside authority. We don't go to the school president.
There's a lot of Urban Meyer in him.
I wasn't going to name names.
You know what? I thought about not doing it, and then you know what? I realized I don't care what Urban Meyer thinks.
But, it's also Jim Tressel went down in the same way, Joe Paterno in a much more egregious way.
Yeah.
And I think there are smaller infractions like that all the time. But it is a relatable human impulse to say, I don't want to admit this is out of my control.
Yeah.
I don't want my people to suffer unnecessarily because of one person. So I want to deal with this internally. That's the pool, and that's a real understandable thing here. I don't think Robert's not the enemy.
No, it's pride and ego that the idea that he spent how many months being a drunk on his porch, that he looked that everyone knew about it, that he was clearly disengaged, he was weak, he wasn't able to do his job to the kingdom.
Right.
Now he's back in it, and now Bruce is saying no. you can't do this.
Right, he undermines the way he does the job.
Yeah, and so
which is brutal.
There is a sense of betrayal that it's his own brother, but he's like, no, I can do this. That's why I'm in charge here. And you don't want to show that weakness to the people that you're supposed to be leading. You make decisions out of that fear of losing your position. And I think you're right that it's incredibly human. It's an incredibly relatable reaction, even if it's a flawed reaction. It's one that we see over and over again.
It's incredibly misguided, and we know basically where that has to end.
Yes, it only ever ends one way.
Right.
Yeah.
But okay, so I think we've recapped in literally half the time.
I think so. Yeah, because again, this arc again, you can look back on it.
It gets smaller each time. 6, 5, 4.
You can look back on it and say it is maybe a lesser arc, but because there is less action here, there's less story movement. It's all about understanding.
Right. To me, there's less narrative unfolding.
Yes.
And it's more.
It's all backstory.
It's treading water, and that's not fair at all.
It's not treading water.
It's plumbing the depths of the texture that was covered.
Yeah.
I just would like it to be moving forward and deeper at the same time.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're moving deeper, not forward. We inched forward, but we went like 4 miles deep.
And in the first volume, we went forward without a lot of depth. We didn't even learn the names of any character.
Of some people, a few of the characters, a few of the side characters.
They didn't have dialogue. You didn't get their name. You just saw them. And you didn't really understand the rules of the kingdom. I still don't know. Do they actually own this land? Is it autonomous from what presumably is the American government? It could also be Canada.
Yeah. But
it's America.
There would be a weird irony in the fact that if they're on this land that they bought from the U.S. government, to then be a part to then declare yourself free of that, like, so you've now recognized you've recognized the government that you're trying to avoid like detection from by officially acquiring this land. Like,
I mean, to me, that's like selling. It's like emptying your checking account and using that to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Being like, I'm totally out of the system. It's like, you just spent all of the system's money to get the non-system money. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So
you still appraise the value of the Bitcoin by the US dollar.
Yeah. So I would have to imagine that they are. I think at some point someone calls them squatters. So I would assume they're not there, quote unquote, officially. But
the federal government keeps pretty close tabs on who pays taxes and
I think
land.
That's part of the issue that I think the people of Cargill are like. They're like, why isn't someone coming and taking these people out? Why are they still there?
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing anything about them?
And I did hear on NPR a few years ago, which is probably not helpful information to disseminate, but they said basically our federal taxes are essentially on the honor system. Because the cost of pursuing you, if you make less than $400,000 or $500,000 a year, is like they spend more to get the money from you if they have to track you down, and even getting noticed, in that way is like the lottery. If you're so they're like, you should pay your taxes, but more than often than not, nothing will really happen to you because it's not worth prosecuting. That being said, I think their information was outdated because, we missed by like a couple $1,000s, and they definitely came after us. It took them 2 years to send us a letter.
Yeah, they'll get there eventually.
And we paid it, but we were happy to pay. We weren't trying to dodge our taxes, but they just changed something and we didn't know, and yada yada. Yeah. But all that to say, even if I didn't send that $2,000 in, I don't think I would be in prison right now.
Probably not. They just probably keep hounding you.
And I just get letters.
Yeah. It could be like wage garnishment. They may just take it directly from you and then be like, okay, we're done. But they're not going to prosecute you that way, probably.
I'm not even going to send the police to my house.
No, they wouldn't do that. Like I said, I think they would go to wage garnishment first, and then that's like a passive way of getting what they need from you.
Which versus, maybe they're doing something like that to the Grass Kingdom, or maybe Cargill is paying for the Grass Kingdom. Which would be a really interesting twist. But I don't think we ever get into that. Because it's not important. They're not trying to tell an interesting story about this rebellious
Yeah.
lot of people and their attempt at creating a society. That's just the setting.
Yeah, and that's one of the tone shifts, because after the first arc, you would probably get the sense that, okay, there's a mystery going on here, because that comes at the very end of the arc. But for the most part, you're reading it, and it seems to be about this community and the idea of what this community is versus what the regular world is, like in Cargill.
Right.
And then you get to this arc, and it's not that at all. It becomes less important. You see the fractures in it, because what they try to do is show that this supposed Eden, this supposed paradise, is actually just like the rest of the real world. Has the same cracks, the same flaws, the same messed up people. So it's actually not any different. And that's no longer important, because now we're focusing on the underbelly, this mysterious death, potential serial killer, all the same kind of problems. So they're actually kind of deconstructing what they set up, so that, the idea of where this place is, how they function, none of that's really important, because that's not what the story is about. But you could be forgiven if, as you're reading the first arc, you think that the story is going to be about.
Right.
But it turns out to not be that.
Yeah. So you just have to bury your inner George R.R. Martin, who wants to know Aragorn's tax policy. What happens? Like,
what happens the day after the coronation?
Right. Yeah. It's like, you're just the worst kind of nerd that ruins everything.
Yeah. Which, again, I think it speaks back to why we don't get a specific setting. Right. Because that's not actually important, even though it seemed like it might have been. That's not what the story is actually about. It is
if the story had not changed direction, that would matter. Now it doesn't.
Yeah,
because our focus has shifted.
Yeah, now we're in this idea of, hey, this is now a noir story about a potential serial killer that happens to be out in some rural part of the country that claims to be a free and independent state.
I'm now referring to it as the Tennessee Valley. That's how I've progressed.
That's solid. I think that's solid. I can't refute that. I can't.
No, can I prove it.
It's not that I have evidence to be like, no, it can't be there. But it could very well be.
No, it's just that lush green opening panel in Volume 1.
There's a lot of great stuff going on there in terms of what the potential.
And it is a hilly area. It's just not mountainous.
It's not mountainous, and I think that, I don't know if that's.
No, there are. This is mountainish right here.
Yeah, there. I guess in the background there are some, but it's not. I don't know if it's.
But it's a large lake too.
It is a pretty big lake. Well, again, we talked about them coming from the.
I wouldn't call it a great lake, but
no,
sizable.
But again, these are things that are when you're reading this story that maybe you have questions about, that maybe they're things that maybe to be interesting to you as the reader, but you realize that they're not interesting, or they're less interesting maybe to the creators because they're not integral to the story.
And it's bad writing to just sit down and answer every question the reader has about the universe.
Yeah.
It's just, I like that, which is why, I'm the type of person, I don't care about spoilers. If somebody wants to tell me the plot of Thor: Love and Thunder before I go in, first of all, I read that Jason Aaron runs, so I know basically what the plot is already. Yeah. But if somebody wants to spoil the heck out of that movie, that will not diminish my enjoyment in any way at all.
I'm the same way, but there are plenty of people who are on the other side of that.
Oh my goodness!
Who again, I respect them, even if I think they're out of their gourd, but that is what it is with stories. But this is one that
it looks like you've got a favorite page pulled up.
I have a panel pulled up for kind of my bookmark here at the end, but it's kind of the last word on the storytelling, in that it's often rare when a book, I think, shifts tones as hard as this does.
Especially for such a short series.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so if it was 100 issues and at issue 50 it shifts tones like this, okay, you're on the downside of a long journey. This is such a short story,
and to go from to kind of make the hard turn that it does. It makes another turn, no spoilers into the final arc, there's another turn there, but it's not nearly as hard as the turn from volumes 1 and 2, and I think that's a rare and potentially, I think it's potentially perilous storytelling choice because you can turn off readers. You brought up The Wire earlier. I mean, you think about the shift in tone from the first season of The Wire to the second season of The Wire. A lot of people were like, "What show is this?" With totally different characters, totally different setting. But yeah, that you can potentially alienate the people who were in on the initial story you presented. And now you're saying, well, that story is not actually what we're doing here. We're doing something a little bit different. And some people can feel like it's a bait and switch. But see, I don't think it's a bait and switch here because you never go back to that. We're constantly changing.
Right.
They're telling you now, this was our setup. That was a story we're telling.
It is narrowing its focus.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's a great way to put it, that it is changing, that this is our setting, this is our world. And now we're showing you how we would tell this kind of story in the world we just set up. But some people just want stories set in that world. They don't want this specific kind of story, Right. They're examining, how do we do this kind of noir storytelling in this setting that we've created, when some people may read that first arc and think, oh, the story is about the setting they've created, when that's not actually the case. So I think I think there can be commended for taking a chance that I think a lot of creators either don't think to take or would never decide to do. Again, I think you're right by highlighting the fact that it's such a short run.
I think that's the challenge. Again, I'm pretty sure this was my suggestion that we do this one. So I remember loving this.
Yeah.
And I also remember feeling like Volume 2 was a slog.
Yeah.
And I actually have virtually no memory of Volume 3. I did not read ahead.
Okay.
I know you finished it out.
I did finish it out.
Which I actually kind of like this. And I think in the future we're going to do things like The Unwritten, which you've read in entirety and loved, and I have not. And I will probably take that a trade at a time and be in the experience of our ideal listener. Someone who is listening to this first time, going through it together, but has a guide who's been through it. And I think that should be a cool dynamic. I would be stunned if I was able to pull that off in the other direction. I doubt there's anything that I've read and remember that you've never read. Or wouldn't sit down and read in one sitting.
Well,
if the challenge was issued.
That would be the harder point. I think we could probably find something that would fit that bill, but then the issue would be my willpower to not be like, well, I'll just read it tomorrow night.
Yeah, I don't think you have the restraint.
Yeah, that'd take a big leap on my part. I could do it though if we found a story good enough. But yeah, so I think that probably wraps up our thoughts here on Volume 2, right?
Yeah. Two last things for me. One, I do have a quote that I loved.
Sure.
I believe it's from Pike's backstory. I think it's from Pike, if he's the one narrating that in issue 8. He says you have to protect what empathy you've got. And he's talking about this in the pages where he's fighting off wolves and things like that in the wild. But it was unclear to me if it was him or what's her name?
Oh, I think
narrating that. It's what's her name?
I think that's Jen talking.
It's Jen because they're talking about how similar their stories are.
She's
Jen
narrating
says
his story. Yeah,
even though it applies to him.
Yes.
So, like the premise of that quote, you have to protect what empathy you've got. Assumes that one, empathy is a finite resource. You are like born with or given a certain amount of it, and the only thing that can happen to it transactionally is that you lose it. Which is a really kind of dire, cynical look, but that's kind of the world we're living in this book. And you also hear this about the guy who, at the opening of that, this is the one where it opens with him stabbing a mother rat as she's going to feed her children. And it's like, he may have already rounded that corner, guys. He may have lost most of the empathy already. He's not particularly friendly to the interrogators, and he's got that suspicious story with the bird guy.
It could also be that maybe he had all of that until Jen ended up dead.
Yes. And he lost it.
Maybe that's what broke him. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, that's a really good. I really love that quote. That those 2 pages there are some of the few in this arc that are more visually based.
Yes,
with less dialogue.
and I really enjoyed that
and that
stint.
That whole arc,
even though I was like, why am I hearing about Pike?
Yeah,
I don't know if I care
because we don't know anything about him. But yeah, you talk about you have to protect the empathy you've got. You have to remember that that they're not all the same. There is goodness in most people. Sometimes you just have to find out how to bring it out of them. You have to become one of them, but also not. So it's like the idea of you have to reach down and find an understanding and understand that, accept that everybody's different.
And in order to really understand people, you do have to become a little bit like them.
Yes, but also understanding that you
where
are
the line is.
Yeah, that you're not all the same. So it's like it's the idea of like the idea that equality is accepting everyone is different but treating them the same, as opposed to eliminating the things that make people different by treating them the same.
Right.
So the idea of recognizing that everyone's got different experiences, everybody's different, but seeing the part inside of all of them that you can connect to, and find that humanity and that empathy, and moving forward with that. And I think that's that it weirdly might have been the best issue out of the arc, even though you're right, it's probably a character I care the least about.
Isn't that a tribute to the issue? Then?
I think it is.
If it's
I
like,
think it is.
Man, we both got some of our favorite panels there, some of the best art, some of the best storytelling, and it was one that I was like, can I skip this one? I think I could skip this one.
Yeah,
with no impact.
What are we really learning about the story? We're learning about Pike, and we learn more about. It's kind of the first flashback for this Jen character who's brand new, who's already dead.
We learn more suspicious stuff about the Birdman.
Yeah. But there are some.
That's a long walk for that line.
It is, and but there are some really really beautiful things in that backstory and in those lines. I will agree with that.
By the way, added to the playlist now will be Marilyn Manson in the Shadow of the Valley of Death. All Them Witches, the marriage of Coyote women. I don't know which one I wrote down.
Marriage of Coyote Woman.
Yes. Then Rolf Harris, Two Little Boys. Who do we have? The Doors, Riders on the Storm. Oh man, when I read that one, I went and flipped back through it because I'm like, I can hear that one as
you
I'm
can hear
reading.
that one as it goes through. Yeah.
And then Iron Maiden, Wicker Man. Not a big Iron Maiden fan.
Neither am I.
So we'll see. But I also was not a fan of. I'm not a Bruce Springsteen fan. That's the other thing is, and my wife loves Bruce Springsteen. She also loves Tom Petty, and so does the rest of the world except me. So I am an outlier there. But either way, I like that. I assume they're not just picking music they like. These are songs that both genre-wise of the song fit the mood of this, but more importantly, the lyrics they've placed on the back cover.
The specific lyrics, yeah, definitely. I think if you read those, I said we'll have pictures of those up on the show page on the site. You can see what it is for each issue, and then think about how you might think it applies. If it's maybe it's just overall thematic feel and vibe. Maybe it's the specific lines that apply to a certain character's motivation or something like that. But I do think it's.
And I just love this because it's not hand-holdy, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to tell you what to think about the song or the story.
But also, they're not doing it by accident. So
it's not accidental.
Yeah. They want people to look into it. They want people to examine it, listen to the song, think about the lyrics. They're inviting you to do that, but they're not telling you why. And so it's just it's an added thing there that they've put on that they feel is important to their storytelling. That they feel is additive in letting the audience, letting the reader,
creating a full experience.
Make the connections for themselves.
And the trend nowadays, I kind of wonder if this came out now. There's been a recent indie comic trend of releasing vinyl records with things. It's not huge, but I see it on the order list more than I used to. And some of them are unnecessary. Like Dark Knight's, the newest metal one, had a vinyl release. And I'm like, was anyone clamoring for that? But it's like a personal playlist made by Greg Capullo and Scott Snyder.
I think it's more the idea of it wasn't a thing before, and now it's a thing at all. So it seems like it's a bigger deal than it is. But I think if this were published a little more recently, you would probably get like what you saw with Royal City, you'd probably get a full playlist of here's the things we're listening to.
Although this came out after Royal City.
Yeah, but I think the idea of maybe having a built-in Spotify playlist, something that you could go right back to and immediately find. That I think it'd be a little more prevalent now, whether it's an actual vinyl release or something like that. I think the idea of incorporating the music, which is, I'm sure, inspiration for them as they are creating the story. Both, I'm sure maybe not both, but maybe Jenkins in his art and Kent in his writing, the kind of things they're listening to that inspire them for this particular story.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Kent sends the script over and says, "This is a song I was listening to," or if Jenkins sends some art over and says, "This is what I was listening to."
This was playing in the studio when I was going on. When I was drawing these pages here.
I think Tyler Jenkins is in Canada.
I think so.
Alberta, and Matt's in St. Louis, so they're not working in the same space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think anything you can do like that to hand off like some of the creative ethos,
pass down some of the vibes.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be shocked at all if these were songs that maybe they were talking about from maybe each of their personal playlists, and maybe some of them are from Matt Kent, some of them are from Tyler Jenkins. Who knows? But I said it's not an accident that they put those songs and those lyrics on the backs of those issues.
Yeah, and I didn't spend enough time chewing on it. So that's one that I'll go back to probably when we wrap the series. When we finish Volume 3, and I put the playlist together, I'm not only going to listen to the playlist straight through, but I will have my books with me.
And really delve into the lyrics of those songs.
Capture, like, where is that line in the context of the song?
Yeah.
I'm going to waste so much time on that.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, so anyway, thank you again for listening. There was just one more episode coming in Grass Kings. And I think hopefully by the end of next episode, we'll be announcing what you can look forward to after this. As of now, we've got a couple things in the hopper. So nothing definitive yet, but join us on Facebook. Join us on our website. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. Comment, share, vote, lobby for your favorite story. We would love to interact about Grass Kings, about Paper Girls. We're still taking questions on that. And we look forward to wrapping up the series with you. Have a good one, and thanks for listening.
Peace.